Good morning, students. In class today, we are going to begin to write our stories. And I know you've been excited to get started, and we've slowed the process down. And that was intentional because there's a lot of steps that go into writing. Writers generally don't just sit down and start writing, they brainstorm and think and have a plan. The last time that we met, we talked about our structure, right? We did a exposition. We talked about how our scene will open. We talked about what the middle scene might look like and then how it might resolve. You and I will meet before you get going. My goal is to get around to everybody to see that you have at least the exposition and the middle scene mapped out, planned out, so you know where you're going. The next step is actually begin to write the exposition. So here's what we're going to do. So you're going to focus first scene of your story. This is your exposition where the readers expect to learn about the character, the setting, and the initial problem. You're not going to go into too much detail. You're not going to write the whole story at this point. You're just writing that first scene. Think about breaking your story up into 3 scenes or 3 parts. Today, we're just writing the first part. Now, if we go back to our mentor text, the story that we've read, Sarah the Brave, we see what we learn in the exposition. So here we have Sarah woke up to the sound of her sister's voice. Sunlight streamed in, lighting up her posters of Taylor Swift performing at Madison Garden and Shaun White flying upside down on his snowboard at the X Games. Someday, Sarah wanted to be just like them. She loved the way they were so strong, so fierce, and proud. Her life seemed so ordinary, though, living on a quiet street in a quiet town. Would things ever change? We learn so much through this description. We learn so much about Sarah. We learn who she admires. We learn her hopes and her dreams. We learn what's happening in her life right now. She lives in a quiet town on a quiet street. And so we learn that she wants, oh, I can't do a little comment here. Okay, normally I would put a comment in right there and I would point out living on a quiet street in a quiet town. That gives us a picture of the setting, and the setting has a huge influence. If she lived in the city, it would be very different. The fact that she describes, she didn't, the author didn't tell us directly, hey, reader, this is a little bit about Sarah. The reader described her room, and in learning about her room, we learned about her as a person. That's why your do now today had to do with what your room looks like. It was kind of a setting the stage for looking at this mentor text and realizing we learn a lot about Sarah here. Julie was shaking her, wake up, Sarah. Suddenly, Sarah remembered it was her little sister Julie's first day of kindergarten, and Sarah was going to walk her to school. This was Sarah's small chance to prove herself. Her parents just didn't seem to realize she was grown up. We have what Sarah wants. She wants to prove that she's responsible enough to walk her sister to school. Small chance. She recognizes this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is an entryway. I imagine Sarah's around 11 or 12 years old and she's wanting more freedom. She's wanting more respect from her parents, and her parents are probably still treating her like a little kid. So we see what she wanted. The conflict of the story is what drives the story. The conflict of what your story is what's going to drive your story. And often the conflict is what someone wants and what gets in the way of what that person wants. She wants to walk her sister to school, but ultimately prove that she's older and more responsible and begin to be seen as a fierce, so strong and so fierce. And yet her parents, we see shortly after, still treat her like a kid. Sarah lay in bed in the moment, dreaming of how dinner might go that night. Mom would lean in and ruffle her hair and say, I'm proud of you, Sarah. With work, Mom didn't always seem to have a lot of time for Sarah anymore. So Mom is super busy. Sarah's imagining the interaction with her. That's what she wants. But instead, she gets to the kitchen, and this is what happens. When they got to the kitchen, Mom was pouring Cheerios in their bowls. Eat up, kittens, and I'll drive you to school. We don't want anything to happen to Julie on her first day of kindergarten. Sarah's jaw clenched. This is the moment where the conflict takes off. This right here is what's called the inciting incident. Okay, this is what, oops, I didn't spell that correctly, inciting incident. This is what launches the conflict. We already know what she wants. The writer has set up what she wants. All right, and I'm going to actually add a text. I can add text boxes. Okay. Sarah wants to be seen as more grown. What gets in the way of that? Right here. Mom calls her a kitten and says that she takes away. She's been looking forward to this opportunity to prove herself. She's been looking forward to this opportunity to walk her sister to school and show that she's a big kid. And her mom calls her a kitten and says that she's driving. She completely breezed over. Mom is probably just busy. She probably got a lot going on at work and home, and she's just probably in the routine of driving the kids to school. But for Sarah, this was something she was super looking forward to. It would be like if your parents casually said, like, oh, we're going to go to Six Flags on Saturday, and you were looking forward to it all week. And then on Saturday morning, your mom was like, oh, we got to go to Auntie so-and-so's house, or we've got to go to the laundromat, or we've got to go to this place. And you were like, wait, hold the show. You said we were going, like, you've been looking forward to it. But parents sometimes say things and forget. Like, my 7-year-old does not forget when I tell her she can go somewhere, do something, have a sleepover, have a friend over, have a treat, something. She will remember to the letter. She can't remember to brush her teeth in the morning, but she will remember those things. So Sarah is hanging on for this chance. She's looking forward to it. And mom says, oh, I'm going to drive her to school. So here we got to know Sarah a little bit. So we got to know her a little bit. So we've got character and I'm going to put that in cap letters, character and setting, background. And then we see what she wants. This is the thing that is going to lead to the conflict. We see mom going up against or stopping what Sarah wants. And then we see that this is where the story takes place. So Sarah's jaw clenched. First, she was not a kitten. Maybe Julie was a kitten, but she was a lioness. Why wouldn't her mother notice she was so grown up? Second, they'd already decided. She was taking Julie to school. It was her job to get her there safely. Mom, you said I could walk Julie. Julie could walk with me. I'll keep her safe. Sarah tried to keep her voice calm. If she cried, her mom would think she was a baby, a kitten. She stood tall, trying to look as strong and confident as Taylor Swift when she first performed on stage. This is the beginning of the story. This is the first scene. Mom eventually agrees, and then we go on to them leaving the house. But this is the first scene of the story. We've been introduced to the character. We've been introduced to the setting, how the setting plays a role. It's subtle, it's not direct. Nowhere does it say, oh, because she lived in a quiet town, Sarah is so eager to get out into the world. Nope, it just leaves it subtly sitting there for us to gather. The writer has trusted us as readers to understand that that's an important piece. You as a writer have to trust that your readers are going to understand when you drop little hints like that. We don't want to directly tell them because that takes away from the reading. Like when you're reading, you want your mind to be doing a little bit of work. You don't want to be spoon-fed things. So as writers, you guys have to make sure not to give too much information about things or not to spell it out too much to your readers. Then we've got the incident that sets things in motion, that sets the drama in motion. Will Sarah's mom let her walk her? Will she successfully make it? And then the suspense in scene 2 begins to build when they come up against the dog. But that's another lesson for another day. Now, some of the ways that you can start powerfully, and because sometimes we're like, I don't really know how to start. So here are 3 leads that can get you starting powerfully. The talking lead, you can lead out with dialogue. So the mundane, boring way is there was a bat in our house last summer. The more exciting way is to put your reader in the moment of what was happening. Quick, hit the floor, my dad yelled. Whatever you do, don't look up, my mother added as I dropped to the floor and slid myself under the bed. It was a terrifying night for my family when we discovered a bat in our house. As a reader, I want to read more. I want to know more. Like, whoa, what happened? What did they get the bat out? What's going on? And that sets up the reader to then continue forward. The sound effect way to open up. This lead gets the reader quickly involved in the story by starting with an event or some kind of an action. There was a loud storm outside my house last night. Kind of boring. Smash! The windows cracked. The wind howled and the door flung open. Rain poured through the screen, drenching the welcome mat inside our house. I will never forget the fierce storm that invaded my house last night. Very powerful, gets us going, gets us moving forward. Snapshot. This one is when you paint a picture in words. That's kind of what they did in Sarah the Brave. There was a description of the sunlight streaming in, the posters illuminated, Sarah laying there, and then a little bit of a connection to Sarah as a character. So this is where you describe in detail what's happening. Ice skating is my favorite sport. That's the boring way. Or it's 10 degrees below zero and the river is frozen a foot thick. It makes a snapping sounds like the limbs of tree cracking. A lone figure glides along the black ice, moving toward the city. The only sound is the scraping of each blade as it bites into the river. That's me doing my favorite sport, ice skating. So there's a vivid description, really gets the reader envisioning and picturing what it's looking like. So that is another opportunity to start out vividly, to draw your reader in, to want to learn more about your story and want to keep reading. Now their task is going to be to get going. To do this, you're going to go into Schoology. All right. Now there's two spots here. Story draft scene 1 is what you're going to open. You're going to open this, you're going to edit your document. Once everyone has opened this and gotten their document, it's going to set up a page for me in my Schoology, and then I'm going to unpublish. You will not submit here. You will then, when it's time to submit, when you're all finished, you're going to submit it here instead. And the reason for that is just very simply, I use the other one to open the document, but this is a much easier way for me to read it. And then we don't have to play the game where it's submitted, it's unsubmitted, it's submitted, it's unsubmitted, miss, I can't edit it because I submitted it. So I'm going to actually unpublish that so that you cannot submit it there. And you're going to submit it here because it always keeps your document open. Once you hit submit in the other spot, you can't keep drafting on that. And I want you to keep drafting on this story. When you open this document, you will see that I have created a page for you, and it's got a heading on it, which is a formal MLA heading. So all the formatting is already done for you. You're welcome. That was another reason I wanted to do that, is oftentimes students do not do the correct format and they lose points at the end. So it's already formatted for you, but you will not submit it here. And I will make sure to reiterate that. And once everybody has opened the document, which will create a folder for me in Schoology, I will unpublish it so there won't be any mistakes with submissions. All right, folks. Happy drafting. I am so excited to get to know your characters. I'm excited to get to know your conflict and what you've got going on for a story. I will be working on my own story as well with Larissa and her best friend Zoe. And I'm going to be formulating what's happening with Larissa and Zoe and coming up with my own exposition. I know how I want it to open. I envision her sitting on the BART with the clackety clack of the train and the tracks. And I'm excited to get going on that as well. Happy writing.